So for today's video, we're going to explore what I think may be the simplest way to actually get hands-on experience with your own local AI agents. And for that, we're going to be using AnythingLLM and taking a look at their relatively newly released community hub, which allows us to find agents we find useful, gives us information about programming our own, and just gives a simple and approachable interface to actually understanding and running local AI agents. So let's get into it. Now, although today's focus is mainly going to be on the agentic capabilities of AnythingLLM, I figure since I am covering a new technology on this channel that I would just do a quick installation guide, as it is rather simple. So I am here in the AnythingLLM docs, and all I'm going to do is just click on the Linux install, as I am running Ubuntu 2022.04. So in order to install, it's just one main step, and that is to copy this command, paste it into your terminal, and run it, which will go ahead and download the app image for AnythingLLM. And this does not take too long. Obviously, it's dependent upon network speed and things like that. However, it is relatively quick to install. And as we can see, it's pretty much getting done. So the next thing we're going to do is simply copy this command, and this will be used anytime you want to actually start this program and run it from a Linux machine, which in my case is my Ubuntu machine. So I will simply enter that command, go in, and it will open for the first time in full screen, so don't get scared. But so there are a couple of things that we go to do to get this set up. The first thing is to actually select the specific backend that I will be using for my LLM. Now, there are a lot of options here. However, in my specific use case right now, I am just going to be using Ollama. Now, when I select Ollama, we can see that it actually automatically identifies the specific LLMs that I have installed on my machine through Ollama. Now, of course, this would necessitate already having Ollama installed, which I do, and I do have all of these specific models installed. And for this use case demonstration, I am just going to be using Llama 3.1 8B instruct, so I will do that. I don't need to click on any advanced settings or anything, and I'm going to leave the maximum tokens in the default value. We go next, and we just see a quick thing on data handling and privacy. And now this is going to be a big consideration for anyone who wants to use a local setup like this, is data privacy. You want your data to remain on your machine and in your own control. So we can see that in regards to the LLM data handling and privacy, it is just the basically default Ollama thing of just having it through Ollama, so that's fine. And then our embedder, the document text is embedded privately on this instance of AnythingLLM, and our vector database, the vectors and document text are stored privately on this instance of AnythingLLM. Now, we can go next. I am going to just go ahead and skip the survey, and I'm going to create a workspace, which I'll just call OMNS. Now that that's done, there is one thing I want to do straight off the bat, and that is to go into the settings here and change the theme to default, which is also dark mode, which for those of us who spend a lot of time in front of a screen, dark mode is good because it is just a bit easier on the eyes. Now, we can just go ahead and, not close that, minimize that. And that is pretty much going to cover the installation tutorial. Now, I figure I will just quickly kind of show how this actually functions before we get into the agent workflow. So basically, I'm just going to go in here in settings, and under my chat settings for this workspace, I am going to set the LLM provider to Ollama, which then will show the model that I have chosen to use. And I will click Update Workspace. And from there, I can essentially just speak to the model how you would with any model. So let's ask it about a historical event, the Summer of Love. And you can see it will take a second for this to load. And then you can see that it is Llama 3.1 8B, but it is the 8-bit quant, so it is using a decent amount of video RAM. In this instance, it's using around 9.5 gigabytes. So not too bad, depending on, of course, what sort of card you have. And we can see here that this is just kind of a nice way to interact with an LLM on your local machine. Now let's go ahead and take a look at some of these agents that we can actually play with. I do have the documentation open here for setting up AI agents. Now I have run through this myself and I have a pretty acceptable grasp on how to do it, but I did just want to highlight this for those of us at home who are new to this, so we have somewhere to go and actually look at and see the instructions ourselves in an easy to kind of understand way. Now I'm essentially just going to go about doing what these instructions say. And first and foremost, we need to go back into our workspace settings here. And kind of as we did in the chat settings tab, I need to hop on over to agent configuration and ensure that the workspace LLM provider is set to the one I am using, which in my case right here is Ollama, and that is the specific model that I would like to be using, the Llama 3.1 8B. Now that that's set, I'm going to just hit update workspace agent, and we can see it has been updated. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is just click configure agent skills. And now that we're in here, I can kind of reference back in the introduction when I said, I think this is really one of the simplest ways to get hands-on experience with agentic capabilities of LLMs. There are a lot of other ways to go about getting agents working, but they are likely going to require some more in-depth coding knowledge, and just perhaps a bit of troubleshooting will be necessitated in using those. But for this, it's really as simple as clicking this. So let's say I want to test the agent to actually generate and save files to my local machine. I hit the toggle right here, press save, and it's done. I can now go back to my chat thread and I can actually go ahead and use this. Now, in the kind of agentic documentation here, there are a few kind of, I will say, like default sample agents that are accessible to us. And since I am going to use the save files one, I'm basically just going to copy paste this example here, and we'll be able to go ahead and kind of see this working. So I'm just going to ask it to summarize some historical event again. And we'll have it do that, and it will go ahead and generate its response as it would normally. However, what I'm going to do now here is paste in this kind of agent invocation, if you will. I am going to make one change, so can you save this information? And instead of a PDF, I'll just do text file. And pressing the @agent, or I'm not pressing, but typing is the way to invoke the agent into the current thread that you have open, which is just like this current chat window I have open. So once I do this, we're going to see, okay, the agent has been invoked, and we're swapping over to agent chat, and it gives us the instructions to exit the agent execution loop. However, it does stay in the same chat. And now basically in a second, assuming this does work, I should see a file browser pop up just like this. And I've noticed that in playing with this, I have to manually hit save sometimes, but we can see that right up until that point, the agent took care of everything. Now, it did not get it in the desktop folder. I do believe I saw that that went in the downloads folder, which it did. However, it pretty much automatically did that all for me, and all I had to do was press save. Now, if we do click on this, we'll just basically go ahead and see that it did accurately save this as a text file on my local machine. And now if I want to actually exit having this agent in the chat, I can just type /exit. And once you have invoked the agent, as I did typing @agent, you don't actually have to press that again or type it again if you do want to continue utilizing the agent in that specific thread. So that's just a one-time thing to invoke it, unless you exit the agent session, in which it just kind of goes back to the general chat thread that you have here. Now, that is just one of the, I won't say demonstration agents, but that is kind of the term that I've come to find I use for this, because these are just kind of some more simple ones that are available here. So we can even see what we have. We have rag search, which is for like searching local documents and things like that you actually give the LLM. So assuming you had some proprietary knowledge base that you needed an LLM to be able to access, and obviously an LLM wouldn't have been trained on that specific knowledge, this kind of allows us to enable that functionality. We have web browsing, web scraping, save files as we just saw, list documents, summarize documents, chart generation, and a SQL agent. However, the thing that I really now want to focus on is the community hub. And this is sort of, I won't say marketplace, but it almost looks like a marketplace where you can just go download an agent and start using it. Now, I want to demonstrate this because although right now there are only 10 results, this is something that you can essentially code an agent for at home and then upload it here publicly if you would like. So as this grows, it would have a ton more potential agents where you could go and pick one and start using it. And basically that's what I want to show right now. So looking through all of these, the one that does kind of look a little interesting to me is this one right here, which is the archive search tool. I don't know how you go about pronouncing that personally, but basically it will search archive.org for papers on a given topic and return formatted results. Now, in the machine learning LLM space, there are a lot of developments and studies that get published specifically on this platform pertaining to machine learning and things like that. So this may be of some interest to those of us who are running local LLMs and things like that. Now, to install this, I'm just going to click import to AnythingLLM, and it will show me this import ID, which I go ahead and copy. Now, to get this working, there of course are a few more considerations. And one of those is I need to go back into settings and in configure agent skills. However, we'll see here in custom skills, there are currently none found. Now, in order to actually import that agentic skill, I need to expand the Community Hub drop-down menu and click on the import item menu item. And basically all I do then is paste in the import ID, continue with import, where it will basically tell me like, okay, this is what you're importing, here's the code for it and things like that. And of course, there is a big warning right here because if you are downloading code for an agent that can actually perform actions autonomously on your local machine, you want to make sure that it's something you trust that you're putting on your machine. So as I have manually copied this import ID and this is what I want, I'm just going to click import agent skill and it has now been imported. So that's done. I just go back here and I need to enable it kind of like how we did with the generate and save files to browser. So I'll just go ahead and enable it and it has now been enabled. So I'm going to go here and I'll do a new thread so that we can just kind of test this agent real quick. And in here, I do believe it is the last one, which would be the readme.md, which is kind of like on GitHub when you see a repository, there's a readme file. So this is kind of like that. And we see a sample agent invocation here. So all I'm going to do is just copy that, kind of like I did with the save files agent. Go back here. And this is a brand new chat. So there is no existing chat. So I'm just starting straight off with an agent invocation. And we can see here, so we'll kind of just see how this goes. And we can see here on the NVIDIA control panel that it is definitely pulling a lot of watts through the card. Okay, so I've searched on the archive database papers related to quantum mechanics, and here are some of the top results. And essentially, so it's showing me some recent papers, some popular papers, and most cited papers. Please note that these results are subject to change over time as new papers are added. Would you like me to help with anything specific related to these papers or quantum mechanics in general? So we can kind of see that this just went ahead and did that for me. And this really is, though simple, an example of an agent. Because we have to remember that this is actually just using Llama 3.18b to actually get this all done. Now, something I quickly want to touch upon is how the agents are actually working. So AnythingLLM is not actually responsible for, I suppose you could say, the pass-fail rate of whether the agent actually accomplishes a task or fails a task. But as we can see here in the setting up agents section in the documentation, there is actually kind of like a big caution warning thing here that says not all models work well as agents. You may need to use higher quantization models for better responses. For example, Llama 3.8b 8-bit quantization gives better responses as an agent. And one of the reasons that is that to actually get some of this agentic functionality to work, this will be like a super quick, like casual explanation, but the model needs to return the result in a very specific format for it to actually continue executing and things like that. And if the model is not good at specifically returning something that is asked of it, the agent will likely fail or go hallucinate or something like that. And there was actually something that kind of referenced that when I clicked here on the save files one. If we scroll all the way down, we can see there's actually a sample issue. My agent saves a file, but when I check the location, it didn't. So if you don't see that it is attempting to call the specific tool name, it never really called and hallucinated. And there are really two suggestions here to fix it. You can be more explicit in the prompt, or you need to use a better model that is more capable of tool calling, which is, again, to very simply put it, just kind of the ability to return output in a very specifically structured format. And not all models are good at that. And that's why they say use an 8-bit quantization of something like that. I suppose real quick, just to try to provide some more educational value, I will just show how you go about do that. So in Ollama here on the website, I am using Llama 3.1. However, if I were to just go ahead and pull this right now, we see it would be the 4-bit quantization. However, if you want to manually select a specific quantization, you can actually go ahead and click this right here where it specifies the tags. And I would just, and this is what I did to actually get this model, I just would scroll down to get the 8B instruct Q8, which we can see is right here. And this is the actual specific model. And you can see that if you were to copy this code to run it in Ollama, which you would just enter in your terminal to pull the model, it specifies the specific quantization of the model. So I just wanted to show that real quick, as your success failure rate is quite dependent upon specific model you're using. Now, I know this has been a kind of longer video. However, there is one final thing I want to do. And when I look at software and test it, I like to really kind of get my hands dirty with it. So in the documentation, there is an actual developer guide here that gives you an overview of how to make your own custom agent. So I spent a little time looking through this and kind of just parsing it and understanding it. And I made a real simple agent that will actually essentially go to the Spotify API and tell me what's new, or just kind of list some new releases and track names and things of that sort. So there is this documentation here, which I just kind of wanted to make note of for anyone interested in actually doing this. And one of the cool things that I see here that actually helped a lot with troubleshooting was that you can hot load the custom agent skills, which means that you can actually make changes to the code without having to relaunch the entire AnythingLLM program, which is quite useful. So to give a kind of not technical overview, but just some really quick background info, there is a specific location you need to put your custom agents, and that is a hidden folder. So I am on Ubuntu here, and I would have to make sure that my hidden files are shown. And once that is done, from my home folder, I go into config, AnythingLLM desktop, storage, plugins, and we have our agent skills folder. And you'll see that there was this one, which I believe was with the install because I didn't put it there manually. But we also have a Spotify top tracks folder, and in here contains the 2 necessary scripts for my little custom agent. So what I'm going to do now is basically go here back into the settings, and we have our agent configuration, configure agent skills, and you can actually see that the Spotify top tracks is right here. And it is enabled. I have my Spotify client ID and Spotify client secret, which are things you get if you sign up for like the Spotify developer place where you get an API key and things like that. It's free, anyone can sign up for it and kind of test things. So now that this is done, basically all I need to do is make a new thread here, and I will call my agent. And you can kind of give some examples on how you would call your agent so that if you were to actually be releasing your custom agent, users would know specifically how to invoke it. So in my case, it is just going to be agent, tell me what's new on Spotify. And once we do this, assuming, fingers crossed, that it does work, it will show us that it is attempting to call the specific tool, which is the Spotify top tracks tool. So that is a good sign. If you recall earlier, you could see kind of in the hallucination section that if it doesn't specifically say this, it is likely hallucinating. And then we can see right here, okay, the agent gives me likes. Hey, it looks like you're checking out releases on Spotify. Here's some new and notable albums and tracks that caught my eye, which is essentially just returning what I had asked it for. So, okay, and we have them right here. We have the names, and that's pretty much it. So I can just exit this specific agent chat, and the agent session's complete, and hey, how are you? And it just goes back to me speaking with Llama 3.18b. So really, it was quite fun and relatively simple to actually make a custom agent and implement it for this. It really did not take a lot of time. My main suggestion would be that if you are going to make an agent that is interfacing with some online service or something like that, having a little bit of experience with just API endpoints and making API calls to different services would be pretty helpful here. And really the only other main thing I want to note, which I guess I don't even need to because it says it prominently here, but your custom agent skill. So here in the hub ID, so this has to be the same name as the parent folder name. So if I go back in here, you can see that this is named Spotify-top-tracks. So my hub ID field in the plugin.json that I made is also named Spotify-top tracks. So the names have to match. And if you are going to be actually releasing this to the community hub, which I'm not with mine because it's just my own Spotify API access keys and things like that, but you want to put in like a README file and things like that, which I did not do for this case. But as a quick demonstration, I wanted to just do that, and really that's going to conclude the video covering this. Again, in the beginning, I said I think this is one of the easiest ways to actually get hands-on experience with agents. And now that I actually managed to write a simple agent for it and test it in here and use it, I can say that it is a lot easier and more palatable to play with than perhaps working with one of the agents in Magentic 1 or something like that. So overall, quite cool, and I believe is pretty good to know about. So that is going to conclude the video for today, and I will now probably be testing some other models.